So welcome to Personal Best. Really lucky today to have Brad Burton with us. Brad is the real deal, founder of Four Networking, and a very interesting guy. I heard Brad speak in Glasgow and couldn't wait to get him on video to do an interview with him. Brad, thanks for taking the time and joining us. So Brad, one of the most engaging things we're talking about this just prior to firing up the recording is just a bit about your background. And not just building up Four Networking, but your experience in doing that, because you're a fairly, untypical business leader. You know, your story's varied and it's interesting, and you've always been really honest and upfront about the kind of slings and arrows that you kind of suffered to get where you are just now. But Four Networking as a business, clearly, I don't know how many members it has now, Brad. It seems to grow exponentially every quarter. What are you up to?
We're in the thousands. I never reveal those figures, but we're in the thousands. And it's, we run 5,000 events a year, so we can sort of work out the math on that. We run 5,000 events across the UK a year. And when I started for networking off, I looked in this networking sort of like, you had the sort of two schools of thoughts. You had the loony left of networking where nothing quite happened, go there. And what do, young man? That's very interesting. Here, take my card. If you get me any referrals, I'll give you £50. And what do? You had that loony left of networking where nothing quite happens. And then you had the hardcore right of networking. Where's your leads? Where's your referrals? Where's this? Where's that? I'm thinking, this is nuts. Where was the mainstream of networking? And it never existed until we created it for networking. And, we run, like I say, over 5,000 events a year across the UK, and it's just, I don't know, in some respects, Barry, I'm waiting for somebody to tap me on the shoulder and say I've been found out. It's nuts. I never expected any of this, if I'm honest. None of it.
It's an incredible story. So going back, Brad, how did the business come into being? Why Four Networking? Because clearly there are other networking events and networking groups out there. All were far more established than you. So what triggered the original idea?
Great call. Well, look, I was working over in London. I was employed. I was on about 30 grand a year, and I was living in Somerset. So I had this terraced house, 2-bedroom terraced house, newborn boy, baby Ben, and I was working in London. And I would drive at 8 o'clock every Sunday to London, get me digs, wake up in the morning, go to work for 3 days, drive back, and I worked out actually once I took into account my travel costs and my digs, I'd been better, literally, flipping hamburgers over at Western Supermare Seafront. Anyway, the resentment was building up. I remember one evening going back from my digs in London, and I drove past a guy going in a house with electric gates. He had a Mercedes or BMW proper car in Essex. And I remember thinking, I could work 80 to 100-hour weeks for this company and still never be able to afford the frigging gates. And it was at that, like Robert and Bruce moment where everything changed for me. But I just thought, this is crazy. I must be 30-year-old going, what? So anyway, basically, resentment building up, and this company weren't listening to me. My ideas were too daft. There was two out there, apart from the marketing ideas. Told their employers a rubbish joke up his arse, and I drove home, and I tell you, for those 3 hours, it was a wonderful, liberating experience. But I'm married, and the wife was furious with my decision. She said to me, why couldn't you keep your mouth shut for 5 days and get your Christmas pay? She had a point. It was like literally 5 days before Christmas, and 25 grand in personal debt, newborn boy, baby Ben, and I just knew that I'd got to start my own business off. Fast forward 3 months, and I'm aggressively waiting for the phone to ring, because I was offered, promised like 8 contracts from suppliers, from people that I'd worked with, and then you fast forward to 3 months, and I'm sat there going, shit, now what? None of the contracts appeared, and it was just like, this is a tough gig. Ended up running my own marketing business and grinding it, sort of victory there, and then it sort of culminated. We had no savings, but everything was just sort of coming to a halt really. Just enthusiasm, belief was falling away, culminated with delivering pizzas. Now I'm still 31 delivering pizzas, and it's not a good look for a grown man delivering pizzas, but there are people who watch this now who will be delivering pizzas or waiting tables or whatever, and if you are doing that, pat yourself on the back, because you're keeping your dream alive. Because the minute that you start looking at the Glasgow Evening Post and start looking on the Thursday night for the job paper, looking if you could do that, 35 grand on target earnings, the minute you do that and you apply for that job is the minute you throw your dream away. So anyway, I realised that I needed appointments. Right? Every business survives through appointments. An appointment, conventional appointment, is me driving to see you after ringing you up for weeks or sending you letters, drive to you for an hour meeting, 2 hours there, £8 parking, and then 2 minutes in, our meeting, you recognise something that I don't like you, you don't like me, we've got 58 minutes of bullshit to go. Well, that's the conventional way of doing business. And eventually you do that enough times, you get a connection. And I recognise that I went to these networking events, as I described a second ago, and Looney left, hard right, and there was just no mainstream that appealed to me. Neither of these, in political terms, Looney left or hard right, appealed to me. I'm thinking, where was the mainstream? And it didn't exist until I come up with this concept, this whole thing about appointments. And, you know, what I did before networking is I based for networking on New Labour in 1997, right? And New Labour in 1997, I looked at what they did in the political space. They basically made the establishment look old-fashioned and funny with it. And that's what we did before networking. We soundbite culture, open shirt ties, all that sort of stuff. In an environment where people say, oh, you can't do that, or it won't work like that, why not? And when I started for networking, 25 grand in debt, newborn boy, baby bed, blah, 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 blah. People said to me at the launch of for networking, it'll never work. It'll never work. And those words stuck with me, and it drove me and galvanised me to go, you know what, bollocks, watch this. And there were people who tell you that your ideas don't work, or this won't happen, or whatever. And actually, if you to listen to these people, you'd be absolutely right. But for me, I decided that for networking was going to be something special and was going to break the mould. And like I say, I've gone through some serious challenges. For networking is now 8, just turned about 3 days ago, 8-year-old. And, you know, he never started making any money properly until about 5-6 years in.
Is that
and
right?
That's crazy. You know, you think you start a business 6 years in.
You know, it's tough though, Brad. You know, you're a guy. You know, you've got a wife and a family and all the rest of it, and you're trying to make this dream work. And sometimes I think, you know, and probably a lot of startup people will get, if not this pressure put on them directly, this pressure implied, which is, why didn't you just give up and find a job? You know, and that must have been, you know, if not a conversation you might have had in your own head.
Oh, listen, I had that conversation numerous times. The wife telling me to go and get a proper job, because at least you know where you stand with a proper job. No, you don't know where you stand with a proper job. Tell that to the people of Barclays, 1800 just got laid off last week. Tell that to Chessups, tell that to HMB, tell that to Game. The list goes on. When you run your own business, you know exactly where you stand, skint. And I tell you something right now, you know, being employed is a bit like being self-employed. The difference is you've got one client, your boss. And if your boss decides that no longer want your services, you're gone. At least when you're self-employed, you know exactly where you stand, skint, get used to it. That's how it is. But, you know, I'm yet to come across a self-employed person that's starved to death. It might get tight, but you always find a way.
Yeah.
You always find a way.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing, though. That you know, when you burn your boats upon the shore, you have to find a way. You know, and if you can't find a way, you've got to make a way. I guess, Brad. So in terms of growth, then the first for networking meetup. So when did that happen, and how long did it take you to start rolling out 2s and 3s?
February 16, 2006. I think, yeah, 2006, Blur. Started the first one off there in Bridgewater. I got 72 people there from a standing start in 2 weeks, right? And it was just pure enthusiasm. I'm not a salesperson, right? And people go, oh yeah, trust me, I'm not a salesperson mentally. I don't consider myself a salesperson, but what I will do, people go, oh yeah, but you could sell sand to the Arabs. No, I could sell them air conditioning units, right? I cannot sell anything that people don't want to people. So I've got 73 people booked, 72 people to the launch. And then we had one meeting, and I got 2 members joined up that day. Then about 3 months down the line, I got a second meeting, and it culminated in 11 meetings in the first year. But what's really interesting about that is the passport thing, which really makes for networking different, because most of these networks, the existing networks, what happens is that a group in Glasgow meets there every week, and that's it. They don't speak to the other group that meets in Glasgow or the one in Edinburgh. They don't do that. With full networking, we have a complete... So if you think about all these other ones being like fish tanks, so let's say we've got 200 groups across the UK, another one. We've got 200 fish tanks that don't speak to each other. At full networking, we've got an ocean. It's all open. So we have it's a bit like Google. You know, any question you want, you can go anywhere you want depending on the question. Same with full networking. So we've got something called a passport. And that came about, the passport system, by accident, which is we had 5 meetings, and we used to just like join one group, and that was it.
Yeah.
So Glasgow 1 wouldn't speak to Glasgow 2. And then what happened, we had about 5 meetings, and then somebody says, to us, I'd like to go to 3 groups, and we said, no, we can't do that. And I thought, what do you mean we can't do that? And that's when we opened it up, and that's why this network, in my view, for networking is the best in the UK, because what we've got is collective strength, whereas all the other ones have these individual strength.
I've been to events like that, and I think what happens is, people maybe subscribe, and you go to a meeting, and it's there's 20 or 30 people there, but over the following months it's the same 20 or 30 faces, and that's not to say that you can't do networking and that you can't do business with those people, but
Barry, the point is this: if you meet someone within that networking event and you've got some connection with, you'll see them all the time. But if you meet someone at that event and you've got no connection with them, you just so of the 20 people that are there, 5 of which you get on with and you maintain contact. The other 15, you've got no affinity towards. What happens in phone networking is because of the nature of it. Somebody goes to Glasgow on this session, and then you won't see them again for 3 sessions. And it's just a different vibe. Just throws the mix up every single time, and every single event's different. They're completely different.
And if somebody wants to check that out, Brad, they can jump onto 4. That's the digit 4. 4networking.biz.
That's right. You guys said, that's right. Look at it.
Nice and simple. Maybe flash that up on the screen as well. And Brad, we're kind of jumping back a bit, but in terms of your background then, prior to kicking off 4 networking, what was it you did during your youth? What did your life look like? And I know you're 20. No, I'm suggesting you're over 21 or anything like that, but in your 20s and 30s.
I had an eclectic life. So in essence, when I was a young man, I've done things like I worked at Butlins, on the clean-up team, cleaning stuff up there. I was a doorman briefly, but my job wasn't to fight people or beat them up or physically. What I was a negotiator. You have them at doors, you'll often see them, you'll have a small guy, he's either a martial artist or a negotiator who can talk people down. That's what I did. I had some volatile situations that I dealt with. I've done 4 years on the dole, so signed up for 4 years, did 2 years, 6 months and 18 months, so 4 different stints in the dole. I got my windows shot through from Manchester when I was 20-year-old, and people think, I was involved in drugs. I wasn't, I promise you. It's in my second book, Get Off Your Ass 2, and what happened. I won't spoil the surprise for any of your audience there, chapter 2 as to what happened there. But just a dark time in my life, and we've all had dark times in our life, and this is the thing about it, in that the darkest day of my life, in fact, think about this for a second, think about the best day of your life and the worst day of your life. These 2 bookends on your life, and I'll steer you down a path and I'll walk. If you think about my worst day of my life, back in 1993, having 2 bullets put through the window, scared to death, and overnight I just left Manchester and moved to Somerset. And it made no sense for many years, and things that have happened in your life and your audience's life won't make any sense. But you fast forward 20 years, the reason I'm doing a webinar with you right now is as a direct result of me moving away from Manchester. I've written 3 books, 4 networking, I've got a nice family in Somerset, bang, 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 bang. Everything happens for a reason, even the shitty stuff, but sometimes it doesn't make any sense until it's in your rearview mirror. And I think that's what I've started doing now, is finding the upside to anything that's gone on in my life.
Yeah.
So I've had an eclectic mix of skills. I was a computer games journalist years ago, and actually you can find me on YouTube. I was on Games Master. I used to be on Games Master doing the cold commentary stuff. So I've had this eclectic mix of skills and life. But I think we all do. But what happens is because we get into CV mindset, it's all geared up to paint a picture. The picture that I'm painting is one of just complete shotgun of life. Just nuts.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. I think people become quite pigeonholed and they identify themselves via their business, or they identify themselves in one part of their life, and it's a bigger story, and it's just part of your life. It's part of your story, and it's just a small part of your history. So it's interesting. But so in terms then, Brad, what you're doing now, because obviously I'd first seen you when you were doing a bit of speaking, and that seems to be taking up more and more of your time.
Tell me about that, by the way, because like I say, up until today, I didn't realise that you'd seen me at the business show, because it was, at first, this was a difficult area because there's about 3 people there in this wide open expanse, and then as we got moving, we managed to get everyone around the outside looking in.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. So I think my business, Outbox 4, the web business I run, had a stand there, and we were manning the stand, and you just came on. And I think, Brad, more than anything, it was entirely that. It was just an alternative message, and sometimes I think we it's just nice to have someone, and I think the world is moving in this direction. Just tell us how it really is, rather than the book side of things, and where you I always think that people can sometimes get quite spiritual, so they build up their business, they make their money, and then they say, do you know what, it's not really about the money, it's about this, and you and I both know, Brad, if you're miserable, then without money you'll be poor and miserable, and with money you'll just be rich and miserable. You'll still be fundamentally miserable. But I think guys lose sight of the fact that when people are looking for advice or trying to start a business or trying to grow it, it really matters to them, Brad, and they don't want to hear that there's a brighter tomorrow, or it's not all about money. And I just think that your message was balanced, but it was also pretty raw, and you said, look, this is how it is, and it's shitty, and it's horrible, and sometimes it's nasty, and you've just got to drive through that stuff to get out the other end. And I think that listening to other speakers and other guy and reading some other material, that message sometimes just gets lost, Brad, and that I think is something you've always kind of been fairly upfront on.
Well, what happens with these speakers is they assume, right, that it's all about wealth and islands and this, that and the other and everything going fabulous. And don't get me wrong, would I sooner have more money than less? More. But there's a price to pay for any bit of finance or money that you go for. And this is the point that I'm probably made over in Scotland, which is, for me, another thing for you to look at for your audience was to think of, this is a lesson in the book, Life Business Just Got Easier, is to think of yourself as a captain of a ship, and you are a captain of a ship, you can do anything you want, and over here is an island with healthy relationships, and over here is an island with wealth, right? Which one are you setting sail towards? You can't go to both, because it's a fallacy. Because what happens is that when you go to this wealth, which is what I was sort of focusing on, wealth and business success, that's what it's all about, business success. The reason I was doing it was kidding myself, saying I'm doing it for my family. That's the reason I'm doing it. But somewhere along the way, you're doing it for yourself, right? So I was moving towards this, and I ended up getting, like a game of Jenga, taking the pieces of the wooden blocks out, and this big tower of business success, and people saying, "Man, look at that! You've got a double-page spread in the Times and the magazine, and blah, blah, blah. And look, you've got a multi-million-pound international business interest in everything you do." And then at weekends, my kids handed off to me because me and the wife were going to a divorce situation. And you think to yourself, "Oh, how did that happen?"
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden, because you're so focused on business success, you've now thrown it in the bin. Bear in mind, we didn't have a pot to piss in 10 years ago. And now you've got, anyway, me and the wife are back together. It's good actually, she's 6 months pregnant again, so we've had sex at least once in the last 12 months. But the point I'm trying to make is there is a price to pay for business success, and people don't think of that price. All you do is you convince yourself of the upside, and so you should. But the problem is, it's great convincing yourself of the upside when it's just you, but when there's other people involved, you've got to factor that in.
Yeah.
And I'm all about being positive, I'm all about that, but, and this is what I'd like your audience to think of, what price are you willing to pay for success? Are you willing to lose your family? Are you willing to lose your kids? See your kids at weekend, lose your marriage? And if the answer is yes, then keep doing what you're doing. If the answer is no, ask yourself a question. What are you willing to risk? What are you willing to play with, and then go and play with that? Because sometimes we just have this unlimited, price to pay, and it's only when you end up losing it all and you go, fucking hell, that wasn't worth it.
I know, and do you know, Brad, that there can't be a worse tragedy than someone to strive their whole life to arrive at a goal and discover that it's hollow, or that it's it's not what they wanted, or they've lost people or relationships along the way.
But if you'd have said to me what I was doing this for 10 years ago, and I said I wanted an Olympic-sized swimming pool, I wanted a mansion, 10-bedroom mansion, I wanted an Apache gunship with Hellfire rockets, stuff, right? And actually, this is what your audience needs to understand. It's not the case now. Is your why. Why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? Because if you can't tell me, honestly, why are you doing it? Oh, well, I'm doing it because I want frigging BMW, or I'm doing it because I want money. If your only motivation is money, it's not enough. You've got to have a reason why, because when you get punched in the mouth, metaphorically speaking, you've got to have a reason to get back up, and it's not enough just because you've got a car or whatever. For me, my motivation, the driving force, two things. One, I wanted to buy my mum private healthcare, which I've done. She was 64, and she's now 70, whatever. But I got to that stage where once you reach 65, you can't get it. You can't get it. So I had to get a policy before she was 65, and I managed to do it by about 3 weeks, right? And that was a why for me to keep me going. Otherwise, I promised my kids to take them to Disney World. I remember the first time I took them to Disney World, I ended up putting £5 on a card, and the wife said, "Oh, we can't do that, we can't do that." I said, we can't afford to. She said, we can't afford not to. The children are not going to turn around and go, "Oh, Dad, do you remember in August 13 when you paid the council tax?" You know, but he will remember the time you took him to Disney World, and that's the thing. So you've got to have a reason why. Because if you don't have that, forget it. Because when it gets tough, and it will get tough, that's not enough to keep going for that one.
And that really resonates with me, you know, Brad. That, you know, what you want, that's your goals, and your what will get you out of your bed. But it's the why that makes you, you know, take the slaps in the face, that helps you pick yourself up. You know, and you need a big why.
But Barry, this is the thing that eluded me for so long, because I was on the wrong one here. I was thinking it's all about material stuff and this, that and the other. And I think a lot of people do. You know, to get to C, where everyone wants to be, you've got to go by A and B. And A and B is the tough bit where you're going to go, this is too tough. But when you get, and this is another thing as well, people say, what my goals, I'm all about goal setting stuff. I've got it now to the point where I never anticipated with full networking on a national level. And in some respects, I'm going, shit now, but I've got to be really honest with myself. Because I never anticipated this. It's a bit like when Mike Tyson goes off the rails when he's earning £300 million or whatever because you get to a point where it's a bit like somebody spending all their life saying, guess what, Everest, I'm gonna take you. And then you get there after 8 years of training and you get to the top and it's just a fucking mountain. And I think in some respects you've got to have a goal beyond the goal. Yeah. And I always say, this is my first book, set yourself outrageous goals. Outrageous goals that people laugh at. My outrageous goal was to have 5,000 phone networking events across the UK. Done it. Now what? And I've reached that point, and it's strange, because honestly, I never expected that. You look at my CV, I should have been a bank robber. You know, and actually, you know, it's just, I don't know.
But it is one of those critical questions. It's that whole kind of lottery win mindset is that people go into their head, oh, if this happened to me, I would do this, this, and this. I tell you what, it soon gets boring sitting on a beach, and if your life doesn't have purpose, and you know, it's why I think we see Hollywood people who, you know, they've got the looks, Brad, they've got the money, they've got everything they want, and they end up dead in a hotel room. Yeah, do you know? And
Let me explain something. This is the piece what you just said there. This is this whole bit about. People say to me, what's my exit strategy, right? Why don't you go sell for networking, this, that and the other? To do what? To do what? Honestly, just think about it. To do what? To what? Sit at home doing video podcasts all day? Well, guess what I'm doing anyway? So what's the purpose in my legacy? Hopefully, it's to create something with full networking, which is where we are. It's really created almost a modern-day village community for business owners. And actually, to avoid people that when they're struggling, like I was, mentally, emotionally and so forth, that you've got a place to turn to. Now, I'll tell you my story. 2 years ago, and it was just roughly 2 years ago, I went over a full networking event, and the lady, I've got a coach, but she wasn't at the time, but I'll tell you the story. She said to me, we had these 10-minute appointments in group time for networking. She said, can I have a one-to-one with you? So we sat down with her, and she said to me, she went, can I be really honest with you? I went, sure. She went, you're suffering massive anxiety and stress. I went, what made she say that? She went, 8 years as an A&E nurse who majored on anxiety and stress. Is that right? And I just started crying in a full networking meeting. And I'm a managing director of this organisation, and I'm crying at a full networking meeting. Because what had happened is my decisions got over me. I made some decisions, and this is what I talk about in the book, which is don't confuse bad decisions with bad luck, or bad luck with bad decisions. Because we do, we're all guilty of it. We're like, oh, it's bad luck that I got caught in a bank with a loaded firearm. No, it's stupidity on your part. But somewhere along the way, nobody wakes up and says, you know what, I'm going to go make a mistake today. Because that's it. Mistake is only mistake after the event. No one, including me, goes, you know what, we're going to wake up today and fuck up. But often we do. And you don't realise that with full networking, hopefully, that my legacy is to positively impact lots of people, not a man with books and speaking and so forth. So my next goal, I think, is to continue doing more speaking, try and get into the prison system to help people there. And also another thing I'm working on a project is to get people off the dole. Having done 4 years in the dole, it's pretty current right now. I think I can motivate people quick to get them off the dole and into employment or start on business off.
Do you know, and that's pretty powerful stuff, Brad, because I think, you know, ultimately it's all about your impact, you know, your legacy, and it's, you know, it's ultimately all we leave is you know, our words and our deeds, you know, and it's the actions that you took that leave behind, that, you know, that kind of legacy thing. And I think you have impacted, you know, I know guys in the full networking community, and you know, they're huge fans of it, and and our regular attenders and such like.
Hey, listen, for every fan, for every 10 fans, I've got someone who can't stand me, and that's the other thing about it.
Surely not.
I've had people sit around and say, oh, Brad, you're Marmite. The only people that say I'm Marmite, are people that dislike me and have no logical reason to dislike me. Right? It's the kind of stupid comment that people say, oh, you like Marmite. I'll tell you the other thing. People come along to see me at these speaking gigs, and they come along with the intent of one, rubbishing me, or two, going, oh, look at this guy here. And I have a disproportionate amount of people, disproportionate for any speaker who's out there, come up to me afterwards and go, Brad, can I be really honest with you, and say, yes, you came along because you thought I was going to be an idiot, you wanted to dislike me, but you think I'm amazing now. And they go, yes. I go, you know what, how did you know that? I said, because I get it all the time. As soon as people say, can I be really honest with you, I say, disproportionate amount of times, and what I'm trying to do is shake up the way that people think about one business and two other people, because the way I look like a football hooligan or a drug dealer, do you know what I mean? I'm not anymore. But what I'm trying to say is you just look at this and you think, this isn't what people or businessmen's about. Business is all about suits and spinny chairs and fish tanks and BMWs. It's not. Business is about this. Business is about people. If I don't like you, Barry, and you don't like me, it's going nowhere. Fact.
Yeah. And I think, do you know, Brad, I think one of the issues, though, it's interesting you making that Marmite comment is, and this is where people feel really challenged, but they would never articulate this, it's you're a nonconformist. And it troubles people. And I say this with respect to you, Brad, but a guy like you is running such a successful organisation, because it calls into contrast. What the hell are they doing with their lives? What they achieved, what they done, and to have a non-conformist, it's a bit like when young kids develop really good businesses, Brad. People get uncomfortable with it because a boy of 22, 23 has built up a really successful business. It goes beyond jealousy. It's annoying to themselves.
But what it does, it shakes people to the core, because the life that they've been told that they're living, which is you work hard and you get yours, and you work all your life. Now, this is a really powerful point in that. You see people, and there's a story I wrote in the book, a guy that I knew, he worked all his life and he was due to retire with his pension pot. 3 days before he was due to retire, he died, right? So he's worked all his life in order to then enjoy his retirement, never made his retirement. So every bit of sacrifice of his, say, £200 a week salary, whatever he did, he put into that pension pot for the day when he could retire. And this is a situation where this is a situation where I've retired today, and this is what you should do. Stop. When you get to the end of your life, it's not going to be about what proposals you wrote. It's going to be about those times when you took your kids to a duck pond. And this is the thing with this whole piece about business and me upsetting people, because people have been doing degrees. They spend 7 years or 5 years whatever degree. Right. No. And then you've got a business degree, and then I'm running rings around you. Oh, what about this? I've got, look at this. 3 books, 1, 2, 3. I've written 3 books, and actually the other thing is, go on to Amazon and you see my books. They're the highest rated and reviewed business books on Amazon. No question, this isn't me making it up. Have a look, you'll see. And you think, how is that? Why is that? Because it goes against every norm. But this is what I'm trying to say. When I was a kid, no qualifications, brought up on a council estate in Manchester. My dad was a heroin addict. I've done 4 years in the door, been addicted to drugs twice. Blah 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 blah. What's your excuse? This is what says people. What is your excuse?
That encompasses it. That just encompasses it for me. Is that people get uncomfortable with I think they get uncomfortable with the success of others in general terms. But when a non-conformist comes along, who in their mind has no business being successful, it really makes them uncomfortable. Brad, could you just flash up, see your last book, because that's the only one I don't have. What one was that? The latest one?
Life Business Just Get Easier.
I'll be on my Kindle tonight, sir. I'm a digital reader now.
1 second, let me just close my door. My cat's coming. Stay there.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Here he is, like it never happened.
Exactly, seamless. But no, the thing is, with this whole piece that you just mentioned then, I am trying to, and I'm doing it, I'm breaking down conventions, and what we're talking to, my agent is talking about me getting on Question Time as the 4th panellist, which, you go and get someone like me on Question Time, I just shake that up completely. I've got a brain, I'm intelligent, I don't have an academic qualification to my name, been done 4 years, and you just think, why? But if you think about what's changed with me, because I'm still the same dick that I was 20 years ago, the thing that's changed with me is application. So I'm delivering pizzas, I'm working for the man, the 30-year-old, and delivering pizzas. What's changed? And it's all about me. It's all about me, my direction. So if I've done what I've done in 10 years, right? But the problem is people go, oh, there's no point. I'm not going to go more at my job, more 30 grand, and more, and that's fine. And the problem is then you get to 65 and die 3 days before. So they've worked all their life because they're scared to death of trying it. What is the worst thing that can happen? You show me one person, self-employed person that starved to death. Show me one.
Yeah.
Right? And they might not be able to afford the granite kitchen surfaces or the nice things in life or this, that and the other. You might have to shop at Aldi, Lidl. Well, my wife still does it now. Right? But the reality is, what are you doing it for? So if you're doing it because you want to work for the man, then that's fine. But if you're doing it because you want to be an entrepreneur, that's fine as well. But the reality is with this whole thing is, at some point, you're going to have to take risks. At some point, you're going to have to take risks. Whether you like that or not, at some point, you're going to have to take risks. At some point, you're going to have to take the stabilisers off the bike. At some point, you're going to have to get rid of your safety net. Or don't. But don't then bitch at me because your life's you're unhappy with your life.
And, you know, Brad, that's a huge thing, you know, and I agree entirely. There's nothing, you know, a lot of people, they don't put any great focus on business or financials, and you know, their job is just an end to a means, and they might have a happier life than anybody else, and that's entirely appropriate for them.
That's great. If people are happy with that, that's great. But what I don't want you to do is I don't want people to get to the end of life and be pissed off with the decisions that they made, and they're stuck in a job.
Yeah, that's exactly, and that bit where you're saying about taking the staplers off the bike, that's the bit that people just, if they're going to start a business, you know, there's a rather horrible Glaswegian saying, but it's that whole shit or get off the pot. You know, you eventually you just got to pony up and do it, because if you don't, you know, you'll turn around and I know I feel this personally, Brad. It's like years now just go by in a blink. You know, I can't believe 2014. What just happened? It was a millennium like 2 minutes ago, and your life just shutters by, and you do it. If
for your audience, if your weekends are going too fast, or you're dreading Monday mornings, you're in the wrong job, you're in the wrong business, do something about it, because it's not going to get any better. Pebbles in shoes don't magic the way out. At some point you're going to have to stop, take your shoe off, take the pebble out and deal with it. And I'll tell you another story. My wife, when we was just about one holiday, she said to me, oh look, there's a spider in each of the corners of the room, the front room. And I said, oh, we'll get them out. She went, oh, I don't mind small spiders. Small spiders grow into big fuck-up ones with big hairy legs. Right? Every time. You show me a small spider that says small, they do something. And this is the thing, people don't want to do something because they, oh, I don't mind it. That's the problem. And people have stuff going on in their lives that they choose to ignore. They choose to ignore because it's easier that way. And the most difficult thing is for me to go and get a cut, a piece of paper, and never kill them, and to take them out one by one. That's the way I deal with problems. And in fact, the way that I deal with problems is just like, is taking one corner by one corner. But people think, you know what, it's too much like hard work, I'm going to go watch telly, so I'm not going to take the small spiders out of my life. Or I'm going to go drink some red wine and drink and block my problems out. Don't get easy. You know, Brad, at some point you have to do it.
I think that's the difference, though, is that, you know, you had excuses in your life. You had ready things that you could point to in terms of background, education, whatever.
But I did. No. But I did use them as excuses until I was 30.
Yeah.
So I used them. I used them as excuses. I did use them as excuses. I was giving myself permission to be a fucking bum. Because I was a council estate, so smoking weed, that's what you do all day. Boom, that's what you do.
Yeah. But you know that just comes that day though, with it. You know, it's a whole pain and pleasure thing, and eventually the pain, the pleasure of being able to live your life in that way versus the pain of what it's going to mean to you and your family, eventually motivates you. You know, in your case, Brad, to make a massive change. And I think that, you know, that's the key to it. And it's why I was so keen to speak to you, because I think that's the core of the whole thing, is that, you know, you don't claim to be have an IQ of 250. You don't claim to be exceptional. You don't claim that you had some novel breakthrough idea. You didn't invent an app and then sell it to Facebook for 19 billion bucks.
You know what? I'll tell you what I am. When you just said that, then something was just clicking. I'm going to actually get this in the next book. I'm the John McClane of the business world. You know, the diehard, the one who's got battered, bloody feet, one through against the odds. That's what's going on here. When you said that, then just the penny's dropping going, that sounds to me a bit like diehard. I think that's why I've managed to get such a cult following, because of the nature of my only story, which actually I'm showing that I'm fallible. Yeah. I'm showing that I'm not immortal. Whereas all they say the dragons all swimming around getting out of frigging Bell helicopters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, do you know, absolutely, Brad. Yeah, do you know, and it's that whole, I think people relate far more readily when they know the true story, and I have to say, even, I think every entrepreneur has had that vulnerability and that fear, and it surprises me sometimes that a lot of them don't want to speak openly about it. You know, they like the veneer of this unbridled success, whereas I think for most of them, they've probably suffered, maybe not quite the challenges that you have, but they've suffered some challenges, but yet they won't speak openly about it.
No, I get it, because there's this varnish on people's lives and on the story. There's none of that. But this is why I believe, I'll tell you, I've got booked to speak at JCB. I'm speaking in front of 250 people at their world headquarters over in Alton Towers. It's down there for them, if I drove past it today. I'm speaking at their gig, and the reason they told me, they went to the business show at XL or Olympia, and there's like 250 speakers there, and I'm like Bill top 1, 2, or 3, something like that. And the reason that this guy booked me, one of their directors, was because of all the 250 people in the show guide, I was the only one daft enough to go wearing a t-shirt and having tattoos. And he just went, wow, this guy is either the biggest, ballsiest, chopsiest person ever, or he's actually as good as he thinks he is. I mean, you've got to be pretty full on to have daft tattoos like this and branded t-shirts in business. I mean, what? It makes no sense, and that's the dichotomy of everything that I do. It makes no sense. But actually, one of the previous directors, he said to me, it's a really good, this is when I was working, one before that talking about took up with us. He said to me, he said, Brad, interesting guy in that your ideas are like balloons, and they make no sense whatsoever to people until you pull them all together, at which point everyone gets it. Because my thinking process is now, it's all over the shop, and it doesn't make any sense to normal people, but then we bring it together and it does. And this is what I've done in that this whole thing, this whole piece that I'm about, that tattoos, and you know, I say it because I want it to be different. I did it because it was a midlife crisis probably, that's what's going on there, but who cares, right? And I've got to live with that for the rest of the days. That's like. But one of the things I did the tattoos to prove something to myself, that there was no reverse gear, that I'm never going to go and get employed. I'm unemployable now. I cannot get employed anymore. That's why I did it. So, you know, this whole thing that I'm on, this whole journey that I've been on has been one of self-doubt, one of courage, and one of actually shaking up the convention. And when I go to a networking event, you know, I went to one at the snootiest manor over in Kent a couple of weeks back, and there was another person's networking event. I was supporting a speaker there. It was very regal. It was like the film that was in Diana film. So it was one of those, it was like proper, I mean, like everything. They had a lot of silverware from Manchester, couldn't help myself. But I went there, and these guys initially thought, who's this idiot? And then I had the bookmark, which is about my latest book. And they said, oh, would you mind speaking for us? I said, fine. So they did 20 minutes, like off the cuff. And I just blew the socks off. And once again, you had 40 or 50 people there, all pretending to be posh because they're in a posh environment. I come along dressed like this. And I'm not being posh, I'm just being myself. And they all sat up and watched and listened. And it's a massive business lesson for people there. Never overestimate anyone, never underestimate anyone, treat everyone the same with respect. What's the downside? Stop looking at people with power notes over their heads as to what their net value is. Everyone has value, and the sooner we realise that, the better. I have 3 minutes, by the way, Barry, before we've got to go and set the kids
Brad,
to
you've been hugely generous. The original Brad Burton. So, listen, Brad, you've been hugely generous with your time. If people do want to connect, I guess they can go into phorenetworking.biz, and from the speaking
so on
side,
Twitter,
you've got a separate site for that, haven't you? Is that bradburton.biz or?
Bradburton.biz, but Twitter's my primary point of contact.
Right,
so
okay.
get stuck into Twitter.
So Twitter/Brad Burton.
Yeah, well, no, it's at Brad Burton, I think it is. So at Brad Burton, the banner.
What am I saying? I'm thinking Twitter address. There we are. It's Friday. It's getting late, and I'm getting mixed up. So perfect, Brad. Listen, that's been terrific. I really appreciate your time. And you know, for you to take the time out and away from your day and daily to share that was fantastic. Brad, thanks a lot. Keep doing your best. Cheers, Brad.
Cheers. Take care, guys. Bye.
So.